the end, I'm always embarrassed by the way in which they thank me or explain that it was a nice part of the process. And
thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice. I'm really struck by some of the observations that you get, Ashton, because one, this man, Yuri 86 in Mariupol, says about the war, this is a brother-killing war, a war where Russian-speaking people kill Russian-speaking people.
He has lived through Mariupol. He became a household name overnight and has spent most of his life working in the Soviet Union. He was 86. And then at the end of it, he's still alive, thankfully, but he was caught in an apartment building that was set on fire. He was dragged out by his friends. And I found him a few months later in a nursing home in Kyiv. And it was really for him a chance just to tell that story to anyone who would listen.
晒到啦，哥哥。OK。
Well, Charlie Dog 2 foot silver. 44. So we're going to hear now from Molly Hood, World Indoor Football Championship Challenge. She was right through the event's final stages last night before failing to improve on 4.17 from 4.78. So the question a few minutes ago to Molly was whether this was about the disappointment of getting so close to gold, or whether it provided a really helpful measure of what will be needed later this summer at the Paris Olympics.
Absolutely, there definitely was some initial disappointment, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I've kind of woken up this morning with a little bit of a clearer head, and I'm really happy with how last night went. I did have some really, really good jumps in there, so there's a lot more promise and a little bit of fire to add to the belly, so it's not all bad.
So you're encouraged ahead of Paris?
Absolutely, yeah. I think I learned a lot from last night. There were some lessons there that were really important that I can take into Paris, and I've got some more confidence for that just to kind of smooth everything out.
Let's get a little bit of background. Waterwalking runs in the family.
Yes, it does. Well, my dad was a decathlete.
39分啊，去到。
My brother was a good pole vaulter too. My mum tried it once when it was almost too much first introduced, so I think she was top 10 in the UK for a while, but yeah.
That really is a family of pole vaulters, isn't it? I hear also that your dad is now in awe of you.
Yes, he's my biggest supporter. My parents come everywhere with me. They were right there in the crowd yesterday, which is also special for me to look out and kind of see them and know that they're there. So yeah, they are my biggest supporters.
On a personal element to your story, through this and your childhood and teenage years, growing up in Cornwall,
beautiful place, but it's very far from my home. So yeah, the city's well known. We didn't have any sports facilities, so we always stayed outdoors, whatever the weather. Whether it's hot, cold, snowing, raining, we just have to deal with it, which has toughened me up over the years, and I think it's actually given me a bit of an advantage.
Aim to become a world surfing coach.
I did a little bit of surfing as a hobby, but yeah, stuck with pole vault in the end.
You've had plenty of injuries in 17 years.
Yes, that's my best, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The one that everyone always talks about is I almost chopped my finger off in the gym. I had 3 surgeries and got it reattached, but I've also had 2 Achilles surgeries, which for me were a lot more major. But yeah, this last year, got to the really healthy and that worked really well.
elections which were held in 2019.
Mm.
Of course, every country tells its own story, so you haven't seen the far right surge in the north, for example, but France and Germany just said there was really a shockwave, and in France in particular where I sit, Macron choosing to dissolve Parliament and call for early legislative elections.
34분嚟㗎，
sort of win, big win by far right parties. Timothy Dalton, I thought 2014
First of all, I think there is a shockwave, and it's not in the composition of the European Parliament as such. It's in the core member states, West European member states of the EU. France, a very stunning unprecedented result of the Rassemblement National, and now this very high-risk gamble of calling a parliamentary election. Germany, the AfD, a party so extreme that even the independents want to be in the same group with it, was the second party in the European elections, ahead of France herself, the Social Democrats, Italy, Fratelli d'Italia, Netherlands, the Party for Freedom. And so the consequence of this, I mean, none of these parties are advocating, Brexit or Brexit. They've taken a look at what's happened to us since Brexit and decided that's not very attractive for their voters. But the consequence is they're going to try to put the entire sharply to the right from inside the EU on issues like immigration, as you heard from the AfD, the Green Deal, and I'm afraid Muslim support in Spain.
It's interesting the context of what looks like the trend is in the UK at the moment, particularly where it would appear that
Fascinating. I would also say Poland, to some extent, in Hungary, and I think the lesson is very clear. When people have experienced government by nationalist populists or leaders, they don't decide they want something else.
Look at how policy is made and adopted. You've got the Parliament, you used to have the council, of the 27 national governments. Now, at the moment, you've got all round, and you've got Muslim minority hit, but by this time you could have more far right than government sitting in that council, and if you have a big contingent of the far right in Parliament, and a big contingent of the far right in council, then that's the to a standstill, or you could look very different Parliament as it is today. What about particularly on national effect on immigration policies, asylum policies, rather than just rhetoric and actual changes, perhaps more Rwanda-style schemes?
I think it's going to be even more online, and Marina Pinto, Rassemblement National, are calling what they call a double fronting. So you have the external frontier of the Schengen area, but then they will then national frontier against asylum seekers who come into other parts of the EU. So it's a kind of sharp renationalization of politics that we're looking at. By the way, I don't think the French, I think, should come much sooner than the next 5 years. If the Rassemblement National actually wins the French parliamentary election 3 days after the second round, we could ironically have a sort of pragmatic, centre-left, cautiously pro-European government in Britain and a hard-right Eurosceptic government.
Projections, with some credible projections from trade associations, suggest it could be as low as 180,000 in current fiscal year. So it's a big gap. That's on this point. Thank you for being very quiet.
Thanks, Lauren. Maybe 80 years ago, in the middle of World War II, a terrible 90s who shared stories back then. But what I really hadn't expected was to meet the granddaughter of the governor of Bengal, Dr. Herbert. So he was someone I spent a lot of time reading about him and research. Susanna Herbert, his granddaughter, didn't know much about the famine, and in a new episode, I followed her, and she was learning more about it, but also coming to terms with a difficult personal legacy.
Really, very few the stuff about John Herbert. It's really not like Man Churchill. But we do know a great deal about him. But nobody knew until I met you. Jumped out of their seat and
None heard who Susanna Herbert's grandfather was, and we did jump from the chair. I've been researching the Raynor family for the past year. So John Herbert's name is not.
He really isn't a pretty picture. He's really colonial in his role. Most of the range of linked to the family from the late 60s to executive of the province of Bengal at that time.
That's historian Jack Lupton. There are many complex reasons affecting the famine, and John Herbert was one of the key colonial players in British India at the time. Susanna didn't know much about her grandfather. He died at the end of 1910.
I don't want our children to not know the way of life. It's only during your program that I began to feel a great need to put walking sticks together and pushing fast.
She started reading everything she could about the family. She went to her family in Wales too, where all the Herbert papers are kept in a private controlled room. Gradually realising more about her grandfather's life, as well as his role in the Bengal famine. It's not
There's absolutely no doubt that the policies influenced the initiative of specialist scale and skills often should be subjected to university run lives
When we first met, she said she felt ashamed. You're a trendsetter.
Sounded like you may have a part there as well. I'm sorry, I had to grab those numbers quickly.
No, we're right. So you're being serious. I can't tell you.
I am actually.
You are being serious. Oh, it's not breakfast time. Where are you from? Where are you speaking to us from?
I'm actually in Norway at the moment.
Okay, well, it's past breakfast time in Norway. Henrik, tell us what we just heard, if you don't mind, without too many scatological references. I mean, how do you infer from that roughly that elephants have names for you?
Oh,
well. I wasn't involved in the analysis, but I know I've studied elephants since 1975 and their communication for much of that time. And I noticed over many years that when elephants give a contact rumble, which they often do when they're a long distance apart, but sometimes you can see that one particular elephant answers within the family, and sometimes it's a different one, and the others just completely ignore the caller. And so I wondered, well, are they just being rude by not answering, or are they able to specify, who they're calling to? And then in 2005, we discovered that elephants are capable of creating novel sounds, of imitating other species and even machines. And so Nicky Carter, who led this study, wondered why they would have this. How are they using it in their natural day-to-day communication? And so he set up to, he asked me for all the recordings I had of where I knew who the caller was and the caller was calling. And he also recorded in Samburu, and then used machine learning to analyze all the data, and found that actually elephants have sort of nicknames for one another that they create. Yeah.
That if they had what Christie's says it was secure, which was the signify and then the signify, that means they can attach labels or even potentially have conversations.
Oh, yes. I mean, that's the thing that's so exciting about this, because I think this is just the very beginning. We have watched them, they have what we call a let's go rumble, where they indicate the direction they want to go. It's kind of like a proposal. I want to go this way, let's go together. And then these calls can transition into a kind of discussion, back and forth, where they seem to be negotiating about where they, a plan of action. And so it may well be that if they have the labels for, names, that they may have labels for places, labels for action. It just opens up a whole, just such an exciting possibility. These are very intelligent animals and they're highly social.
Just time to tell you that before we go, a reminder this is the podcast tonight. It's already an 80th episode, yes, it's just 46 like that on the iPad. We looked at Manifesto Media Innovation. We've gone up to 2 episodes with each yesterday. James Sawyer, he's the voice very quick to break all our generation. It's several people populace across the world, or some people consider like that. Tonight we've got our first ever live show right where we shall do so way on Friday. There's no well today at Petersfield and 65 on the
That's it from us here this morning. Our editors were Dan McAdam and Jack Evans. This is the director of this was From all of us,
Labour is promising to have a very bold crisis in children's protection over the next 100,000 votes. Vote against the democracy and the party says that will be funded by a crackdown on tax avoidance. Labour is also going to ban sales of energy drinks to under 16s. There's unemployment. Figures from the Office for National Statistics show an increase to 4.4% in the 3 months to April. That's up from 4.3% in the previous 3 months. Hong Kong's leader, John Lee, has accused Britain of weaponizing its judicial influence after a former Supreme Court judge warned that the rule of law in the territory was in grave danger. Lord Sumption, who resigned from Hong Kong's highest court last week, said it was slowly becoming a totalitarian state. The boss of Tesla and X, Elon Musk, has threatened to ban his staff from bringing iPhones to work after Apple unveiled plans to integrate artificial intelligence into its products. The technology will be embedded into Apple devices. Elon Musk, who has his own AI company, said the plans were an unacceptable security risk. BBC News.
This is BBC Radio 4. In just a moment, we're going to meet the Wolf of Via Vesuvio. He's the star of Pompeii, which means he might be interested in the topic of today's Call You Indoors. He lives somewhere affected by large numbers of tourists. Call You Indoors is just after midday, Monday, 10 o'clock this morning. So now we travel to the Lake of News to meet the man who oiled the wheels of commerce in the last days of Pompeii. This is Roman.
To know what it means to be Roman, you need to look beyond the sweating gladiators and the stark Shakespearean togas. There are fresh stories to be told and other lives pieced together from scattered clues and new discoveries. I'm Mary Reed, and in this series, I'll bring you the stories of 6 fascinating people who lived at the height of Rome's power, from a shopaholic soldier to a poet who outshone an emperor. In this episode, we meet a money man who did rather well for himself using the wheels of commerce in the last days of Pompeii. He's Lucius Caecilius Euclid, part banker, part broker, definitely all hustler. We've come into the south of Pompeii through the so-called Marine Gate, which was one of the main entrances to the city on the seaside, and it's now the main tourist entrance to the site. And we've made our way up from there to the Forum, the civic centre, the open space surrounded by major public buildings, temples, and a one-off remake temple to Jupiter over the Forum. And to get to kind of this space, you have to go through this open space, past the temple, and make a right. If you're in search of real stories and real work, Pompeii is in Egypt. From the volcanic ash that buried this town, the Bay of Naples in 79 CE, we can unearth the lives of some of its inhabitants. None more fascinating than Caecilius Euclid. We know what he looked like from a portrait statue that we almost certainly in. We've got an astonishing cache of documents that tell us how he ran his business. And we can visit his house. I'm crossing Caecilius' threshold with Sophie Hay, archaeologist for the site of Pompeii. Really big, if you'd be defaulting, you'd be a bit worried coming in here, I think. But, it's been greeted on the floor by this beauty, of course. You have a sea of a white mosaic here, and in the middle there is a little dog sort of curled up, looking very friendly, which is very different normally to the dogs we find portrayed in mosaics in Pompeii, which are more like sort of keep out guard dogs, they're sort of straining on a leash. This one is kind of curled up and very, very happy with itself, so less menacing. We'll walk over him. I think we avoid that we just tread on him. Most people come to Pompeii and think, we open the doors to a house and discover it, and we have all the answers, and yet this is a really rare occasion where we potentially know what he looks like, we know what he did for his living, and where he lived. And this is one of the few houses you can say we know that much. You call him a banker, but he's a kind of middleman, auctioneer, credit broker. Yeah, exactly. And I think that the word banker is for us means absolutely one thing, but it actually didn't.
Abandoning the values that he had in the 60s and the 70s. He said, no, he said, a lot of people put up their fist and they say, power to the people. When I build an Apple or in those days a Macintosh, and I put it on your desk, and I have a price point that everybody can buy it, I'm literally giving power to the people. And he really believed that.
By now, hippie idealism had petered out. In its place, the reality of an oil crisis, a global recession. Larry started to wonder, what if the strange new machine Steve and others were building was the missing piece of Stuart Brand's vision? The whole Earth catalogue could only reach a few thousand people. What if computers could connect us all, give us access to tools, and turn us into gods? So Larry called up Stuart Brand.
I said to Stuart, why don't we set up one of these communities organized around the whole Earth community? And he said, I don't know about that.
What was he not sure about?
Well, it was a business. None of us had really run a business. I certainly hadn't. You know, where the money comes from, where the machine comes from, where the software comes from. And I said, well, will you talk to me about, how about lunch this afternoon? He said, I'm busy. And then Ryan, his wife, they were going to go skinny dipping, and Ryan said to Stuart, we can go skinny dipping anytime. Let's have lunch with Larry and talk about this. And over lunch, we came to this design idea of getting the people who had loved the whole Earth catalog together online. What was the reason for doing it? I saw on some of these early conversations magic happen. I mean, people would get to know each other and not know whether the person they were talking to was black or white, male or female, tall or short, American, for example. What Martin Luther King said about where people would be known not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. I saw that happen when you couldn't see the other person.
The Well was born. It stood for Whole Earth Electronic Link, the digital twin of Stuart's book. By the mid-90s, it had become the most important place on the internet. Hardly anyone was online then, but if they were, they knew about the Well.
The quality of the conversation immediately became the place to go if you wanted to have an interesting conversation, whether it was about spiritual matters, political matters, whether it was about sports, sex. We were really lucky that the Grateful Dead was part of our world, because I would say at one point 30 to 40% of all the revenue came from deadheads trying to get tickets.
The website and the book shared a radical vision. The old hierarchies controlled information. Powerful TV and newspaper magnates decided what ordinary people read and saw. Knowledge was locked away in dusty old libraries. People outside your neighborhood were foreign. Stuart Brand's book had tried to change that. The internet had finished the job. I see the Well as the first social network in the world, as the direct ancestor of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. It wasn't just technology, it was a social revolution built on a crazy idea that we should have access to everything and everyone all the time. I reckon I was the first person in my town to hear about the internet. My dad worked very briefly at Apple Macintosh just after Steve Jobs released his Task Master home computer. One day in the mid-1990s, he told me about this unique thing that was taking off. Millions of people were logging on to find out information, gathering chat rooms. Soon, he said, I'd be able to talk to anyone, anywhere in the world. I lived on a small island in North Kent called Sheffield, although just a couple of hours from London, run down, or. And back then, home computing felt like science fiction. Why would I want to talk to someone in California or Tokyo or Paris, I thought? But people did. In fact, all over America, more and more people were starting to connect with an Stuart well, it was controlled self-selection. There was a kind of unspoken agreement there about behaviour. You had limits, you could do what you only wanted, you were responsible for your words when it worked. But as the internet grew, millions of people went on. They didn't care about the former precedent for owning your own words. I don't think that I understood that the people who used the well were a minority of people who espoused goodwill, most of whom really meant it, and that once you would make it ubiquitous, you get the best of humanity in the world. And some of them were starting to say things that weren't very nice.
Danny Forrest is a criminal. And Stratton Oakman is a bunch of brokers who either lie for a living or get fired.
This is the most important insult anyone's ever made online. Julie would say, I hope you hear my little name. My name is George Belton. I'm a former member of the class of in 1993, Jordan Felton, played by Leo in the Wednesday, played Stratton Oakman. Except not everyone believes they were successful as we claimed. All the question for us was on this Some people started anonymously posting in online chat rooms that what employees at Stratton Oakmont were doing was absolutely not legal. So Stratton Oakmont sued. Not the anonymous poster who said they were a lying cult, but the company that provided access to the chat rooms, Prodigy Services. Prodigy was confident it would win. There had been a very similar case just a few weeks earlier with a different company called CompuServe. That time the judge had ruled that CompuServe was not legally liable for what its users posted. Because it hadn't edited or deleted anything, the judge ruled CompuServe was just a delivery system, a platform. But Prodigy billed itself as a family management company. They edited users' posts with porn and bad language on their sites. And this time, the judge decided that because they were editing what users posted, Prodigy was acting like a newspaper that had printed libel. They were a publisher. They were legally liable for what they carried on their sites. Leo, or Jordan, sued on the lawsuit. Suddenly, every website owner and internet provider in the US faced a choice. Leave all the bad stuff online or move it behind. Because the platform tried to clean up, we now are publishing. They got sued. On the other side of America, a young, ambitious politician called Christopher Cox is flying from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. and spots an article about the Prodigy Board.
And so, how do you feel about this decision? Or are you responsible in this way? What incident? Dr. George Lamar,
What's the picture that a typical American congressman might look like on a TV show? White, early 70s, grey hair, looking only look outside the country. That's Chris Cox. He might look like a stereotypical politician, but he hasn't. Before he was in Congress, Chris ran a business that translated the so-called unions as newspapers and typefaces. He had educational associates working for him based all over the world. To track a program, he bought state-of-the-art IBM computers. They ran out of gas. By the time he ran for office in 1981, Chris was building his own computers and writing his own software. He was the right man for this job.
From 1988 until 2005, I was a member of Congress and Section 230 along with my co-author and represented now Senator
users, companies, and fellow members of Contact. They realized that if websites like Prodigy were legally responsible for what publishers, for what we were talking about, what would we do? So they came up with something simple and revolutionary to make this browser
I understand your concerns that people have about how tech platforms have centralized power. I actually believe the much bigger story is how much these platforms have decentralized power by putting it directly into people's hands.
President Trump also fighting the tech titans of Silicon Valley today. The president said that he will veto a new Defense Authorization Act unless Section 230 is terminated. President Trump's call for immediate termination of 230 is, in my opinion, the only way this country can be saved from the technology and social media oligarchs and the left that they control.
I think social media is the most important industry in the world. The decisions made behind their doors permeate every aspect of modern life in every country on earth. It started with a crazy idea and a simple law that we should have access to everything and everyone. It promised to knock out the old gatekeepers that controlled us, and each of us would be our own gatekeeper of information, liberated, informed, and free. But instead, these companies created something Larry Brilliant never expected.
The naivety is not understanding that when everybody has access to your screen, and you don't have the ability to sort it, then you're going to be hit with a lot of really awful things. And you asked me earlier about how did the aspirational moment, the idealism of that moment, how did that get transmogrified into what we have today? And the answer is simple: money.
Next time on The Gatekeepers, money starts pouring into brand new Silicon Valley startups. And one thing matters: exponential growth.
March 2020. I'm on that. Because, hey, $1 billion's not the limit. I think we can go 2, 3, 4, 5, I think essentially everything. Well, what? What is it you're going to do?
Was presented by Jamie Bunkers and produced
stylish tokens and from marble. Kitchens came a long way in that century. One had to cook, we had to live, eat, and wash up everything in that one room.
The book writing story definitely require the back end 100 years of the
Exploring the history of a room that was once the domain of the 1950s housewife and Yao of my second person.
What sound do you think that is? Of regular ball and music sounds. It's right here, we're thinking. Miller, I soon recall the shot I felt upon first seeing John Osborne's Look Back in Anger in Liverpool, in the late 1950s. I've actually read Grace the Theatre largely been scenes of polite middle-class dramas in which well-spoken men and women courteously resolve their on-screen differences. I spent a great deal of time entering and exiting through French windows. As a would-be rebellious teenager, I relished the manner in which the hero of the play, Jimmy Walker, poured scorn on conventional wisdom about religion and marriage, proper behaviour. One of his targets, Colonel Nigel Redford, his girlfriend's father. One damning phrase was particularly memorable. Nigel, Jimmy said, was a straight-backed, chin-post wonder. The last majority of characterization again came to mind as I was reading a new book which reveals the dramatic length to which Americans were prepared to go in order to become straight-backs. That book is Slouch, possibly a marriage of America, the author by Beth Leaker, who is Saturday Preston endowed professor in social sciences at the University of Pennsylvania, where she now joins me. Good to speak to you. Your book focuses on the US, where older UK-based citizens will probably remember childhood where they were constantly told to sit and stand up straight. But a transatlantic preoccupation with posture as a matter of etiquette, I understand, has existed since the Enlightenment, if not before. But you say it didn't become what you could call a scientific and a medical obsession until after the publication of Darwin's On the Origin of Species in 1859.
So Darwin postulated that humans evolved from simians by, first of all, standing order, led many of these universities to burn, incinerate, get rid of any kind of archival evidence regarding the posture, fitness, exam, and photo programs. A lot of these posture photo programs had already ended by the 1970s. Some key legislative changes would happen, giving students more autonomy. And so students started to push back against the mandatory posture exam. And so by the time that Rosenbaum publishes this article in the 1990s, the program had already been, not in existence for 20 years. But a lot of the alumni were alive, and his story created quite a backlash. Angry alumni writing letters in threatening universities. They made an appeal that they had a lack of privacy, that these photos should belong to them personally, or they should be destroyed.
So I understand it was only elite students whose photographs were destroyed.
Rosenbaum mainly focused on the Ivy Leagues, but if you look at the actual archives, there is a list of what photographs still exist. And the photographs that still exist are mainly of people in prisons, in hospitals. So you have probably a lot of lower class people's photographs still exist in that archive. But the elite had the power to have their own history deleted.
Your research does demonstrate that science really doesn't support conventional wisdom about proper posture. So I've got to ask you, why did it gain so much traction?
I think it confirmed an already existing bias. Posture has been a concern since the ancient Greeks, and since the Enlightenment, there were a lot of etiquette guides about posture. And so once you get evolutionary theory and then a whole science developing around human posture, the thought that slumping was inherently bad for physical health just kind of flowed. Bad posture tells us something about one's morality, about one's ability. And we have to also remember that for most of history, and so
until very recently, there was a very strong bias and discrimination against anybody with a disability, anybody who had a non-normative body. And so the posture epidemic was one way, a very kind of crude way to delineate able-bodied from disabled body. You could discriminate against somebody who had a slouch or a curve, and it was assumed that your outward appearance indicated inward ability and morality.
Not denying that posture therapy can be a powerful tool against existing back pain. What would you way salvage that thought after all the rather long trouble getting posture panic?
I am not opposed to yoga, to standing desks, to anything that people do to improve their well-being. I'm more trying to get us to think more critically about when we say to someone, oh, you should stand up straight, what do we mean by that? What do we think that that's going to improve?
Yeah, even while you've been talking, I've been pulling myself together in the chair. Jessica, thank you very much. If you'd like to comment on anything in this program, do write to me at c.co.uk. That's Domino there, walking in New York, following several score of songs of doing the process of this movement. But until I read it just I had a sense of the importance that could be attached to such an everyday form of locomotion. And that book's entitled How We Trans-Alan the Politics of the Body. The author who now joins me is Matthew Bowman, who is Professor in the Institute of Matthew, before we discuss your current study, looking back into your previous work, you've got a long-standing interest in the history of walking in cities. You're probably interested in the first place. What did you try to explore?
Being a militant walker myself, I walk 7 or 8 miles a day, every day. And I think very conscious, partly as a result, of the politics of the way in which other people walk, the walking body, and in the way in which it's defined. Well, if I walk by class, I suppose, so my first book on the subject was on night walking, which was all about the way in which people who walk at night from the Middle Ages onwards are regarded as vagrant and therefore criminalised because they don't travel by the sophisticated means.
Let me take you back to the introduction to an earlier, in an earlier book of walking. You quoted James Joyce's portrait of the young Joyce wrote, and every single person had a different way of walking. That illuminated your study, didn't it?
Absolutely it did. I always think of Dickens, who do the police in different voices, and think one might equally say we do the police in different paces. But pacing too, like voicing, is something that individuates us. That how we walk carries a kind of social signature. We photograph the world when we walk. But I'm also interested in the social traditions we inhabit, against which we battle in many cases, inscribe themselves in our bodies, shape and misshape the way we walk.
Many people that you all upon in relation to the pieces talk about the surrealist Andre Breton, who believes that potentially any purpose every day. And then you reference the novelist Ray Bradbury's 1951 short story The Pedestrian. Tell me what interested you about that.
It's a wonderful short story set a century after it was written, so 20 years. And it is all about a man who, in his dystopian totalitarian conditions in the future, finds that he's the only person who walks. Everyone else either travels by car or they are locked in their rooms in front of the television. And his character, his protagonist, is someone who exercises their freedom by walking, but that freedom is infringed, they are arrested, and they are sent to the psychiatric centre for regressive tendencies. That's the title. So in other words, walking in this imagined future is regarded as regressive, completely outdated, obsolete. Bradbury believed in affirming the importance of walking in an increasingly mechanized culture.
You say your book is about some of the ways in which posture and gait manifest symptoms of alienation
going back to the Marxist tradition and then to Marx and Engels themselves in the mid-19th century, Marx has this wonderful phrase, I think, corporeal organization, by which I think he means that our bodies are constituted by the kind of society that we inhabit. And he and Engels, his great collaborator and friend, are very interested in the damage, the distorted damage that industrial labour does to working class people. Currently trivial things like varicose veins. They're interested in what Engels calls industrial pathology, how alienated and exploitative working conditions.
There's a gentle sea between the hands that tell me spread my face clearly. Do you know what to do? Blow. Slow to open. Breath. Turn. Play with this. Let's have a kiss. A pumpkin. Deeper hand thinking my lips. And I believe them. I believe it. Please, please, it was true. But the cost I wanted to.
That was Because, written and read by Nida Zakaria. Sean, what kind of themes do you gravitate towards, in your own writing?
I think in my poems I tend to gravitate towards imagined landscapes. So they can be real places, but they tend to be kind of wild landscapes or full of trees. And often at night. I don't know why this is some sort of subconscious problem that I have. But also kind of moments of spirituality or kind of the body hitting up against the spiritual. I like those things in poetry and the sacred things that they represent.
Did you ever write about your own yourself within environments growing up?
Yeah, as a child I used to actually really love writing horror stories. Those are the first things I remember writing, and I think it was a sense of just possibility and kind of going into a deep dark wood or something.
Oh, you look forward to the horror films. Now, your next choice is by the American poet Mark Jones, and this poem, Tiara, contains some incredibly powerful things.
Yeah, I mean, I love this song. The first time I heard it, I just remember feeling this visceral sense of myth. It has anger in it, but it's all the way through it. There's something about the way that it moves it that seems to kind of always bring me tears.
Ramona Hagner and Tracy Howard, lastly at Enterprise. Will you read the poem?
Yeah, of course. I should preface this by saying that this is a poem that Mark wrote to the first person who died of favorite poets. Tiara. Peter died in a paper tiara, cut in the book of princess paper dolls. He loved geometry, fashions, and jewels. However, he said, when he worked in the hospitals, I was watching the Betty Film Festival on Channel 57 in Denmark. At the bridge, the tension broke when someone guessed the casket closed because he was in there in a big wig and heels. And someone said, you know, he's always late, well, he's not even here. The subject's not moving. And someone said, yes, ask for it. And all he did was go down into the soft tide of wanting as much as he wanted, giving himself over so drunk with stone it almost didn't matter. So they were beautiful, selling into him simple, ravishing music of their home. I think heaven, perfect spaces, poised over the realms of desire, where dreaming and waking men lie on the grass while wet horses roam among them, huge fragments of the music we dive into in the body's paradise. Sometimes we wake not knowing how we came to lie here, or who has crowned us with these temporary precious stones. And given the world's perfectly turned shoulders, the deep hollows blued by longing, given the irreplaceable silk of horses rippling in orchards, fruit thundering and
Given the ordinary marvels of form and gravity, what could he do? What could any of us ever do? But that's clear. Yavuzcu bağırmak, yolcu ve belges şu. Dr. Carey Etter was asked to hear poetry last week. I must admit I don't know poetry. Can you tell me about that? Yeah, I wish more people knew this poet. She's big in America, but not so much on this side of the pond. I think she only has 3 collections. She's an intensely private poet, so it's difficult to know a lot about her. But she has this great mythic connection, and a lot of the poems start off almost like a tale or a carol, but there are times when they don't, so they have that narrative quality. So she's one of my favorite poets ever. Inspiration. Yeah, so this is the street poem. Exactly. The bees get landed for jewels, 2 small swarms the size of numbers, and golden teeth like numbers. They hung next to each other, at the height of a bee's breast, above the net of black carpets. And because the light was very bright, it was hard to see, and harder still to see what hung between. A snake hung between. The bees held up a snake, lifting each side of his hand, just below the pointed end. And in this way, very slowly, they carried the snake through the garden. The snake's long body hanging down, its tail dragging the ground, as if the creature were a criminal being escorted to execution, or a child hidden under clothes. I kept thinking the snake might be at home, held by 2 ghostly hands, but the snake was sleeping, his body green as the grass, his tail white as the sleeping flame, the body of an old man, his hand was by his fingers useless, the greenness and the blood, and his body, the wind circled moonbeam silently through the air. There was something deadly in it, or already dead, something beyond the I lay breathless against the palm, a narrow slit, running between its 2 swarms to carry the snake through a wide garden, past the sleeping spot, past the dead roses nearly past the small pond. And when I looked up, the bees and the snake were gone, but the garden smelled of broken fruit, and across the grass a shadow lay, for which there was no source, a narrow plate dividing the garden, and the air was like the air after a fire, and the breeze engulfed the snake, until it fell Children of the Spirit. Winter is fallen early on the house upstairs. Birds in reverberating frocks horn its ancestral box. Bright are the plenteous berries and clusters in the air. Still as the fountain is, the dark cool icy sea. Whereupon the small and sandy sun floats in the air on into the west of crimson and the south of
Hello, Ruby.
Hello，
Hello. How was your day?
三木啊，
such a wintry house, like rabbits in the frozen snow, their tails and footprints go. Their laughter rings like cymbals.
要打電話翻學啊，哥哥，
No.
They're small,
應該電話
I
咧
left it in here.
like wine resins of us. Their
See?
solid bodies gentle as
Okay.
flakes in the air. Sprays of flowering pepper from the glass of the roof. Above them, silence rolls, still as an Arctic sea. Like hail, night falls, the wintry moon glitters. The crocus soon will open
grey and speckled banknotes. Wild arrow,
咁咪係整到細啲，公公就快翻屋企咯喎，佢公公就快翻香港，公公禮拜四翻香港。
At no time to hear one of your poems, don't mind. What are you doing?
Yeah, I've chosen a poem from my latest collection that I wrote. It's called We Didn't Mean to Kill Mystic Lady.
Title, yeah. Can you read it for us?
Yeah, so I should say this poem I wrote it when I felt enlisted to the Irish Queer Archive in Dublin. So it comes with footnotes of most of the and it's about the killing of Jack Kennedy. His murder sparked the first poetry of the world. I think that's everything apart from glass now.
to us reading Moonrise by Gerard Campbell Smith. And when we approached Jules at this next poem, Hilary Benson, to read, she said, perhaps there'll be a bit of things in there too. Well, this poem, Confessions by E.J. Holmes, is more than just print, isn't it?
Yeah. Fiona is, and she would know that I will pick Dickens, and I'm a huge fan of his work. I think he's just one of our most brilliant lyric poets. This, for me, feels like a perfect inhabitant of the popular world. It's a moment of calm and exhaustion, and it takes artists title
Sad, agnostic soul. I go down to the river and swim along the fence line, trespassing, water cold and sweet to the nape of my neck, every nerve alert. And I watch the mountains whip back, leap back, fight, their scourge, those insects demonized, that harry, brutal meat. The sandy bank is riddled with their nests. Each hole is a snug of crumbling growth, and the long ledge hums with sprawling wings. The martins weigh anchor across the sky, as if they're trying to catch down heaven. And now it seems that heaven is upon us, like some vast and open canvas. Love flung down, and the willows shiver at intervals, their bright and fine stems falling like green rain. And I'm carried by the river, numb with cold, a compass to the current, briefly fuel.
That was Fiona Benson reading her poem, Carefully, Palm Blood. One choice, our guest today, John Heath. Now we'll be back next week with more Poetry Please, and a good hope for all that. Goodbye. Welcome back. Next week we'll be joined by the National Poet of Wales, Hernan Issa. Today's programme was produced by Sally Hill.